yeah, DAOs just feel like the way to scale better ways of working together, and not these mechanistic, hierarchies that make us all feel like cogs in a machine.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another exciting episode of NewForum.
And on today's episode, we have with us Bryan Peters, the co-founder of Team Sobol, a platform for leading the way for decentralized and humanistic work, aka DAOs. And we're super excited to talk with Bryan all about the DAOs he's involved in, such as Bankless DAO, NFT Punk DAO, and also Team Sobol, as well as how the future of work can be impacted by DAOs.
And as always, we're powered by NewCoin Foundation, focused on fostering the expansion of decentralized social applications, also known as Social 3.0, by forming an ecosystem and a community of visionaries, creators, and investors to spark conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3.
Hi, Bryan. Happy to have you on today.
Hi, it's great to be here, and thanks NewForum community for inviting me in.
I'm wondering, how did you get part of so many DAOs? I see you're part of the Bankless DAO, City DAO, DAO Punks, NFTs, and I'm wondering what got you so excited about the DAO space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So I've definitely fallen in love with DAOs over the years, and one could say it's almost a borderline addiction, and I have to be good at curbing my enthusiasm for them. It sort of starts from experiences early on in my post university days, where I was just excited about innovation. I really love the creative process, and particularly technology innovation. And so I was always trying to understand, how this happens. And I, was drawn into the Silicon Valley mythology, as I like to sort of refer to it, as like, well, this is where innovation is happening. It's in these startups, and venture capital is flowing in, and there's ping pong tables, which I knew, was not a part of it, but like, I just appreciated this sort of the energy, particularly appreciated the stories about these flat, agile, fast moving, dynamic organizations that were trying to limit hierarchy in the early phases of a startup and the innovation that they were seeking. And that it was very mission and vision aligned, like that these startups had, were sharing a story of what they thought was, possible. And that was very attractive to me. But I use the word mythology because once I started to get embedded in these types of startups that would raise capital and were growing at a certain trajectory in the growth, it snapped back to sort of traditional hierarchy and management, and bringing in layers of management and reporting lines, and that beautiful energy that was in the space where people were communicating and collaborating with ease just kind of like got sucked out of the system. And watching this happen left me asking, like, well, hey, this beautiful thing existed, and it was a felt experience. I think in the DAO communities in the Web3 space, we call this vibes, for lack of a better way of describe it. And basically all the vibes disappear when you start to march in these hierarchies and scale up using a mechanistic process, which is the traditional way of scaling a business. And we have these conversations, and I was a part of leadership roles in these types of startups. And, the conversations are basically, there's no other way to do this. This is how you have to scale, suck it up, say goodbye to those days. And that just wasn't a solid answer for me. And so I started to sort of, with some colleagues, seek, is there something else we can do? Can we preserve this? Can we have both scale and vibes? Or can we have both scale and, this incredible sort of fabric of multi-leader and emergent, sort of coordination, collaboration, and innovation that is mission and vision aligned, is another way, a bit of a word salad, but another way of saying. And so in that journey of seeking this, I eventually found my way to DAOs as a potential answer. And so first it was, there's these self-organizing communities, and I found some literature and research around these self-organizing communities that don't have hierarchies, and manager reporting lines as their primary organizational structure. And so these types of communities would be communities like holacracy, sociocracy, teal organizations, based on the book by Frederick Laloux that talks about reinventing organizations. And so these communities were rallying around the idea of, no, we don't need to do this. We can do it differently. And they would form more formality around these sort of collaboration structures that they were using in lieu of traditional hierarchies. So it was a great first step. But as I embedded in these communities, to finish out this answer, I started to realize that they have some limitations too. They're using social trust as the primary mechanic for maintaining these methods of collaboration. So, they form social agreements, they could write constitutions, they have agreements about how they're going to work together, how they're going to give each other feedback, how they're going to share rewards. And, they do really radical things, a radical in comparison to enterprise, like transparent salaries and extremely transparent and dynamic budgeting. Very beautiful, but it struggled to scale as well. It struggles to scale trust. And this is what eventually led me to blockchains in 2017 and decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. I was on the ethereum.org website and saw, that you could codify agreements. You could actually make them code that executes in the form of smart contracts on a blockchain. And they had examples of different ways you could govern and vote and make decisions, because how you make decisions when it's not the manager making decisions was a big thing in these self-organizing communities. But again, they sort of struggled to scale this to large numbers of people participating in decisions. How do you harness the wisdom of the crowd when the crowd is really big and it doesn't go to chaos? And so I fell in love with the idea of DAOs based on that and dove deep in the Ethereum ecosystem. And since the crypto winter that was previously there, the one around 2018, 2019, the idea of DAOs never really graduated past an idea of DAOs. And so I've been waiting personally. So in 2021, when DAOs started to move beyond just decentralized finance and started to bring forward DAOs that were more social in nature, like Bankless DAO. And then, I watched as Bankless DAO scaled, these DAOs from DAOs, like, DAOs are being birthed within DAOs, like in the case of the DAO Punks NFT. I mean, that's why I'm involved there, as I was involved at Bankless, saw these artists, Sinjin and Crypto Bushi, doing an NFT-based project where they were going to use the funds to help do grants to unlock more DAO punks, aka more people participating in DAOs. Like, you just see these sort of emergent behaviors. And so that I just had to be all in, because I'd been waiting so long to see, sort of this manifest. And in 2021, you could see it really was. And so, yeah, it was like, if I saw a tweet that was interesting about a DAO, like in the case of City DAO and Scott, who was the chief instigator there, so to speak, tweet goes up, hey, let's put land on the blockchain because there's a Wyoming LLC structure and collectively governed land. It's like, yes, that's amazing. So I dove right in, and this was the pattern for me. So I know it's a bit of a story, but DAOs just feel like the way to scale better ways of working together, and not these mechanistic, hierarchies that make us all feel like cogs in a machine.
I'm also interested to know about your platform for leading the way for decentralized and humanistic work called Team Sobol.
Sobol, you got it. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Get into that a bit more. It would be good to hear about that, and maybe like how would you define a successful DAO?
Okay, yeah, that's a two-part question. I'll start with the origin story of Sobol, and then you're going to get a sense that I like to tell stories. So, gear up. Sobol is birthed out of that love for DAOs alongside my fellow co-founders. And so we met up at the ETH Waterloo hackathon back in 2017. So the first Ethereum ETH Global hackathon. And, one of our co-founders was embedded within the Consensus community. And so Consensus was instigated by Joe Lubin, one of the co-founders of Ethereum, who had formed this idea that, hey, Ethereum is an incredible foundation on which we can start to build this decentralized future of human coordination and collaboration and value sharing networks. And so Joe started to basically say, okay, well, we've got folks who are working on on this, and this is my take on it. I mean, Joe has lots of, online materials, but this is my take on it. It's basically like, okay, you've got this substrate, you've got this foundational technology. To unlock its potential, you need to start to build the applications. What's so beautiful about smart contracts and the Ethereum blockchain is that it starts to allow you to, program decentralized applications on the blockchain versus it being a single-use, purpose-built, blockchain. And so Joe founded Consensus, and started to fund effectively a venture studio that was going to start building all kinds of ventures and funding all kinds of different ventures that were going to build all the applications and infrastructure that were needed. It's like a spark on the fire, if you will, where the Ethereum blockchain is the kindling ready to go. And so what was so exciting is we met up with Donnie, our third co-founder, who explained how this consensus ecosystem was self-governing, and that it was in effect a proto-DAO. And we started talking about all the operational challenges that today we talk about quite regularly in DAOs, of like how hard it is to coordinate in an extremely dynamic system where many people are participating in decisions, and those decisions are happening quite rapidly. And then that's evolving the structure of the community and the organization real time. And so we started to talk about these operational challenges, and we got together as a trio and embedded ourselves within the consensus ecosystem to help solve some of these challenges and problems working immersively. And this is what brought forward the Sobol platform. It started by understanding that the first problem that we were facing is we can't see what's going on. In this case, they were using Slack. Today, Discord is the social platform for DAOs and DAO coordination and communication. And we were using Slack. And what was happening is, what you get in these Discord servers and DAOs, just like Discord is your org chart, if you will. And so, all the channels are just spawning, and, they're representing all the projects, and you're making decisions quite rapidly about how funding will flow. And we had kind of this jury duty style of governance where subject matter experts would come into a panel and to basically assess pitches for new ventures or renewal of funding. And so it's a lot like grants committees within DAOs, spawning new projects. Very similar pattern. And so the thing we recognized first is a foundational need. You need to be able to see it. And so we started, focusing Sobol first as a platform on mapping and visualizing how a DAO evolves and changes. Who are the people? What are the teams that are being spawned? How are they structured, changing? And what are the roles that people take on? Because when you have a dynamic group of contributors who can move around and wear different hats or participate in multiple projects simultaneously, spin down one hat, spin up three more with the agreements of their peers, you need to have a picture of who's doing what. Otherwise, what happens is you kind of like start to erode trust through chaos because we don't know who's doing what, who's accountable for what, and we start to get anxious about that. And when we get anxious, we effectively retreat back to, I just need somebody in charge. And so you're almost like starting to just desire that old traditional hierarchy. And, it's a little bit like a deal with the devil, for lack of a better way to describe it. So Sobol's original intent was like, we need to stave that off, and we need to build a platform that helps a DAO see itself and operate. And so that continues to be our mission today. But today it's evolved as a platform, and how we do that. We basically start by integrating with Discord to bring all the information, particularly around role tags in Discord, because role tags start to identify how people are showing up and participating. And so we can create a membership directory that is based on, the token gated Discord server roles, which gives them permissions in Sobol. We can start to map teams in Sobol and dynamically put people into the members of the teams based on their Discord role tags. And you start to get a sort of living, breathing map of your DAO. And so that's where we started, but we're also starting to integrate in with the other operational components. I mean, the years have gone by, and since those early days in Consensus, there's now on-chain activity. There's primitives and DAO tooling. So we're integrating in with the treasury management systems like our Gnosis Safe integration, and we have governance-related integrations coming up shortly. And so there's basically, in addition to this map, Sobol is also now focused on automation platform for your DAO operational tooling stack. So we want to be fully interoperable with all the open protocols that are out there, agnostic of the choices that DAOs make about how they want to operate their DAO, giving freedom to make those decisions and evolve them over time. And you get these like Lego building blocks of how you're operating your DAO. But the thing that we miss, and we notice we miss from Web 2, is we often miss that like consolidated user experience, that navigational interface, which drew us to the, the first thing that we did as a platform in Sobol. And the problem with the old Web 2 way of doing things is those operational consolidated interfaces are often things like the Salesforce platform or the Jira Atlassian suite. And they basically take control of the market. That was the Web 2 model versus the Web 3 model. We need to be interoperable with one another. And so Sobol is interested in fulfilling this consolidated experience that's interoperable with all the protocols, giving them their own autonomy and sovereignty, and that is maintained, and playing nice together in the sort of total stack of operating your DAO. So if we've done our job as a Sobol platform, you have one spot where you can see what's going on in the DAO and figure out where you want to participate or rewire how your DAO operates, across multiple protocols that your DAO is using with ease. But we're doing it in such a way that we have not created the old patterns of like vendor lock-in, et cetera. You have massive sovereignty as a DAO and as a contributor participating. And so we're really excited about, the interoperability and the collaboration potential. So that's what Sobol's doing. That's the dream, is basically you get to operate your DAO the way you want to. You can use all the tools, but you can have that consolidated experience.
Everything you said sounds really rich and fascinating to me. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you keep the community safe? Like your community or people that you work with or you collaborate with, how do you keep them safe? And like, just to make sure like everything is working in the right way and everyone is thriving inside the DAO.
This is a rich question, just because safety is such a felt, visceral experience. And so, yeah, I can only speak to it from my own personal thoughts on safety, and, kind of relates to why I was attracted to DAOs in the first place. I think I started to recognize that my safety, or my sense of safety, was starting to become extremely reliant on others. I think it always will be. And in my work collaborations, the human-to-human trust was paramount. Why? Because power was being concentrated into my manager. So whoever was in the power hierarchy, which was quite explicit and clear, so at least I had enough transparency to know to whom, and that chain of command, as they call it. I only felt as safe when I really started to understand things. I only felt as safe as the relationships, and then the second order relationships, and trying to understand those, like, because the power of the person who I was directly reporting to was actually, gifted based on the authority of the person they reported to. So where I was in that, there was effectively this connection, and I had to understand the social sort of attributes of that to feel trust and to feel safe. I mean, you could write whatever you want on the wall in terms of values. You could put whatever you want in a piece of paper that was my, role description or, employment agreement or whatever. But like, you learn very quickly through experience, and sometimes, with a couple of tears, because it gets real. That's the actual truth. The actual truth is, can I trust this person I'm reporting to and what they're saying to me and what actions they will take relative to what they say they're going to do? And can I trust that they have enough power and that their relationship with the person who's next in that line is good? And so honestly, that's where safety resided today in a working environment. And I think the question with DAOs is, okay, well, how do I feel safe in a DAO? Sometimes that can actually be hard, right? It's a little bit messy, it's chaotic, it's crazy. In the absence of that structure, it can sometimes be pretty wild. There's rug pulls, there's scams, there's, but I think the safety in a DAO is found through the mechanisms that bring me self-sovereignty and choice. So, and often the strongest mechanisms and safety rails are when something is actually programmatically deployed on an immutable blockchain as code. And so we can trust in that code is a big thing that I think was a fundamental difference. And this is part of what drew me to DAOs, is when we codify that and it's open, transparent, and auditable, then, if somebody says that they're going to agree to pay me, X number of tokens per month, but I have to trust that they're going to, sign a multi-sig, I'm still in a paradigm of human trust. But if there is a smart contract that has been deployed and pre-funded, that says that that's going to happen, then I can see, what the pre-fund amount is, and, I can understand, that this will execute, and I can trust that it will execute. So there's a fundamental difference there. And so there's a massive level up in safety, I think, through trust in hardened agreements via blockchain, and the smart contracts and how they execute with regards to the tokens, as well as the rights imparted to me for the tokens that I hold. If I have 35,000 bank, I know I'm going to be able to get into the bank list server unless they change the rules via the governance, which I get to vote on with my tokens, sort of thing. And so I think by trusting how the operating agreements are in place and how they're encoded, I can start to feel safer. When I think of the Moloch contracts as one last example, I can put my funds into a Moloch contract, like via the DAO house setup or Tribute DAO. They use the Moloch contract, and the Moloch contract allows us to fund a treasury, receive, shares of the treasury. And then if we're not satisfied with how governance is going on, relative to it, we have the right to exit the treasury. And so right to exit, right to fork. If you don't like how a blockchain's working, the participants, be it the nodes, validators, miners, they can fork, and so this right to exit is a very, very important part of feeling safe. If I know I can leave, and if I know I can leave safety, and I know what risks I'm taking on, then I now have the sovereignty to decide whether that's a match to my life. Versus it's really hard for me, even with a really strong human relationship, to know that that's actually going to be maintained, because I've experienced, and many others have, that can shift. It can shift quite rapidly. I mean, I love humans. I mean, Sobol's working on trying to make more humanistic experiences at work via DAOs, but humans also, can break trust. Can be, the beauty is how dynamic they are, how shifting and changing we can be, that we have neuroplasticity that allows us to change our minds and effectively rewire ourselves. And so therefore that's a beautiful thing, but it's also a thing that can make it very hard to trust humans. And I think it's nice to start to enhance trust through code and give us that safety that we all seek and desire when we're looking to operate. And we can make informed choices and know that at least the playing field is going to operate in a certain way, and we can make decisions whether that resonates for us. So that's my thoughts on that. Huge question, but wow, beautiful one.
Thank you so much for your answer, Bryan. I think we all want to see thriving and safe and healthy DAO communities. And you touched a bit on reward systems, and I'm wondering, how do we build reward systems in DAOs that are functioning for the DAO participants, and how does the tokenization process plays into this? Because we all know that if there's, for example, a token, the dynamic can switch a bit. So I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on that?
I think DAOs have an opportunity to take on an age-old challenge, which is, how do you match rewards with contribution and impact? And so we've seen that just compensation and rewards, because I like to use the word rewards because it's sort of more all-encompassing, or you want to abstract it even more because even rewards is a bit constraining. It's this concept of, how do we get a fair value exchange going in almost everything, right? That is sort of the root of some of the vision and mission for what the Web3, technologies are looking to try and do. Is I think we still don't have it right. We're not getting a fair value exchange. People who create value, or entities that create value, or even bots that create value, be it technologies that create value. How do we ensure that value and the impact on the world is being acknowledged using the markers of value creation? And today, that is a big component that was absent in the previous versions of sort of the internet, was was that the best way for us to assess value is often abstract it back to something like shares in a company. That is how we assess the value that somebody has been bringing in the early stages of something, or continues to bring as the organization evolves. Another form of value is in the form of direct compensation. A beautiful abstraction is just money. Money is attempting to be a marker and an abstraction for our values as a society, and it's actually doing a really crummy job. It's just doing a substantially better job than when we were doing the trade and barter system way back. But the underlying problem here is just basically, how do we create these fair value exchanges for value created and these various markers of value that have utility, or a store of value. And so if you abstract it out to that layer, in DAOs, often a place of work, is a place we spend most of our time at work. That we talk about the 9 to 5, but it's not really a 9 to 5 anymore, because it's very much always on in many ways. And that's the arena in which we often are creating value, bringing our skills and passions to create some sort of impact. And in DAOs, we pick the DAOs that we want to participate in based on our values alignment as well. So that's actually already a value exchange, right? In a DAO, I will participate sometimes in a voluntary manner because I just am so mission aligned to the thing, and it's not really resource to compensate me in other forms. But in DAOs, we can start to, because tokens unlock more granular ways to demark value. And I think there are some things coming that are even beyond tokens, because you see another way of exchanging value in the old system was the title you had, which is kind of disgusting. And often, there's title inflation, which is talked about. It's kind of like, similar to inflating a currency, but you inflate the value of a title. As a part of your compensation package, we'll give you a VP of blah, blah, blah title. And so you're a VP now, which means you can now use that as a reputational marker, put it up on your LinkedIn, and then, it's enhancing your negotiating power in sort of future things that you take on. So I'm just trying to denote all the different forms of value. And so there's this other one in DAOs, which is these reputational markers. If I am shown as participating in governance, if I receive tokens in the early phases of a DAO, you can watch those on-chain transactions. And that's another way for me to show the POAPs, right? Another form of basically a value exchange. I'm able to show that I was here and I was participating and I was contributing. So the tokens can also impart another form of value, which is really important beyond just money, which is rights, right? Another way in which I can get value in exchange for my services and contributions is that I get new rights and privileges. In the old model, that might have been like, you now have 3 weeks of vacation instead of 2. Congratulations for being dedicated, to this organization and meeting your 2-year mile mark or whatever. But in a DAO, I can get governance rights. I can enhance my governance rights. I can enhance my access rights by being awarded more tokens, be it, an NFT that demarks I'm now a level 2 and gives me level 2 access, or be it, tokens that are used in a token weighted governance solution where I can now have increased voting power. So when these things are working right, we now have, DAOs being able to recognize value in tons of ways, quite rapidly and quite transparently. So this is the level up in my mind, but it actually is just creating a massive design space for us. So DAOs are really early in trying to solve the age-old problems around, valuing people's contribution and work. And so to circle back on that, I think in DAOs now, we're just in the playground of trying to understand what we do with all these new things that we can play with. And DAOs and tokens and blockchains are effectively unlocking more things, like more knobs that we can turn relative to compensation, remuneration, and the giving of rights and freedoms within the DAO. And so I think there's amazing patterns and experiments being played with, but I think we're just getting started. And what's amazing is not so much the individual primitives of compensation, like streaming of tokens, that are stable coins and therefore kind of a little bit like a streaming salary. Or, another primitive would be the peer-based remuneration of coordinate, where I can, run around. We each get allotted certain amount of tokens and we give them to each other along with a thank you message. And we have this beautiful sort of peer-based recognition that's also imparting, governance tokens that give us more decision-making rights. So it's our peers saying, thank you, your contributions matter, and therefore we think that you now have the context to be a better governor in our system and making decisions alongside us in the community. So that's another manner, or primitive that's being played with. There's bounties, of course, is the one everybody loves to talk about in DAOs, which is just basically like Web3 version of Upwork inside your community. Do this task that's defined by somebody else and reviewed by them, and you will be rewarded X. So there's certainty around that, task and what it'll be worth to try and take it on. And I think what's neat is that there's probably something beyond this too, and I'm barely scratching the surface, but I think the important element of this is that DAOs now have the chance to mix and match all of these, blend them together, rotate one up, rotate one down, add a new one in, like maybe a revenue share, that if this project I'm participating in, revenue is flowing into the contract address, it'll be split dynamically and trustlessly to the parties on a rev share agreement. Like that's just another primitive. But you start to mix all of these in and think about it in the perspective of like the life cycle of the thing that you're working on together as a DAO. You'll maybe start somewhere, and we'll get good at creating patterns for how we might start together, and then we'll get good at understanding how these patterns should evolve as the project or the DAO evolves and matures as well. And so yeah, I mean, it's a really, really complex domain and a really complex space, but at the same time, I just think there's a massive unlock in DAOs and these new technologies for far more granular control and a massive, experimental playing field. So welcome to the sandbox of value exchange. Tokens are unlocking a crazy set of new patterns.
Very, very well said. I'm excited what smart contracts and tokens can really do especially for the creative economy and for, all the freelancers, creatives, and people out there who work maybe in different DAOs and want to do different projects. So I'm excited for that.
My next question actually has to do with how do you make a DAO successful when it comes to voting, like the structure of that, token governance, and how do you manage funds and build community? But before you answer that, I think there's a tweet that I feel like, I don't know, connects to it. When I thought about the question, I was like, okay, something about tools, it kind of made me think about this tweet where you said, as a DAO operator, I'd like all my tools in one place, not everything in one tool, both create a consolidated experience, but they're not the same.
Yeah. Okay, beautiful. I think there's two parts to this question. I'll anchor into to the tweet first. I think this kind of circles back on something we were talking about earlier, which is this idea that, as one of the co-founders of Sobol, I think we're very interested in how do you create that open experience. So, I want all my tools in one place. So I love consolidated experiences as an end user, because as a contributor to a DAO, I want to hop into a portal that shows me, everything that's going on in that DAO at a very, very high level, and allows me to quickly navigate, based on the game I'm playing and the way I'm playing it. So maybe I want to hunt for some bounties. Maybe I want to understand the structure of the DAO because I'm thinking of investing, my time, energy, or maybe purchasing some tokens because, deeper participation is behind tokens and token gated. Maybe I'm hunting for a role that has a bit more substance to it. And so I need to know that, what roles are available. How does compensation work? If I was to dive in and, contribute. So, I mean, those are the journeys I'm on as a contributor, and that's just one persona, one player in a DAO. But generally, when you're trying to answer these types of questions, you need a consolidated experience. You need to have a place where you can go where a lot of that information is aggregated and easy to navigate. But you see, often when people want to create a consolidated experience, they then mash everything into one tool. And that's bad, because what if I like 60% of that, but the other 40% of that tool and its opinions don't match how I want to operate or how our DAO wants to operate. I'm locked in. I'm locked into that experience. And I call this the like all-in-one solution, or the DAO in a box, or, you know, one click you're DAOing, you know, and, you know, that there's a lot of that going on. And it's because we're feeling this tension of wanting that consolidated experience and thinking that that's going to actually unlock better coordination, because we can have better transparency. Not transparent, you know, I can go to Etherscan and become a sleuth of transactions and on-chain events. No, like transparent that's functional in the sense, oh, I can transparently see how this DAO is operating and how things are moving. And you get that consolidated experience. But if you're going for this like all-in-one, you know, it kind of locks you in. You don't have a lot of choice of subbing in and out the opinions. And what's beautiful in Web3, as I was talking about earlier, is that there's tons of different protocols. You know, just circling back on that compensation discussion we were just having, each one of those neat ideas of a way in which we can play a game of assessing value with one another and distributing and sharing value more automatically. And in a trustless way, that requires a lot of different opinionated protocols. And as we talked about, those opinions will be valid for specific DAOs, or even more so, specific moments in time in that DAO's life cycle. And so if we can't quickly sub those opinions in and out, then we get a lot of lost value by consolidating an experience into one tool with one set of opinions across how you operate your DAO. And so I think this kind of gets into what Sobol's building, right? We were like, oh, well, how do we create an aggregated experience and allow you to just sub the tools in and out and allow you to wire them in and out and get that nice consolidated experience that you're seeking? But this also plays into your other portion of your question, which is like effective DAO operations is evolutionary. So if you want to be an effective DAO, we have to recognize that the whole experience of DAOing it is just massively new and nascent. And we're trying to discover the patterns. And there is no right way to DAO it. If you ask like, hey, which DAO is killing it? I'm like, there's some given a real strong effort, have great energy, and have their heart and in the right place and are running great experiments. But I'm not going to say you should go be just like this DAO. That's the pattern, because the pattern doesn't exist yet. And so because the pattern doesn't exist, if you want to be a really great DAO, you have to actually just accept that. Accepting ignorance at the start is like the best path to being a great DAO, because you recognize then that this is going to be an iterative process. And I would argue that although down the line we might start to see more and more patterns that we can borrow from, it will always be an iterative process, because it is a set of humans collaborating globally at incredible scale with large amounts of energy in the form of capital and human talent at play. And when you have a system like that, you know, good luck saying you've ever solved how to DAO it. And so I think really at the end of the day, this tweet is about, you know, in selecting tools, be careful that, you know, you are able to evolve, because to be a great DAO, you will need to be able to evolve to respond to everything that we learn, borrow from the patterns that were successful elsewhere, try new experiments, and then luckily this whole thing is a transparent space which allows us all to borrow from one another. So, you know, borrow a cup of sugar from your neighbor DAO. You know, share governance patterns, share experiments and results. It's what's so beautiful about the space. As we continue to do that, we will continue to, you know, successfully do this together. And I think that's a big part of like why everyone's like, we all gonna make it. It's because if we maintain that ethos of trying and sharing so openly, and maintaining openness, and also in the technology stack that we participate in to try and uplift this, then yeah, we all make it.
More collaborations, co-creating, you know, is very important. And I hope that we don't kind of like shy away from that we do more of that. And I want to thank you so much, Bryan. And I'm also wondering, like, where can our community and listeners find you on your social platform?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thanks for the chance to just share these things in a relatively unfiltered fashion, you know, that I'm quite passionate about. So, you know, much appreciation for that. in terms of, if you want to continue the conversation with the folks from Sobol, we're at Team Sobol on Twitter. And from that profile, you're going to get links to the Sobol community Discord, where you can hop in, see what we're up to, what's coming down on the roadmap, as well as we have many contributors who are participating. That same Twitter account is doing weekly Twitter spaces where we're bringing in folks who are building in the space or who are experimenting inside of DAOs or sharing their story as a new contributor to DAOs and what it was like to go in. We're just trying to explore all the stories related to these themes, and so that's happening there. It's happening on our mirror, and you can find us on the web at sobol.io.
Thank you so much, Bryan. I feel like this episode has been so informative and insightful, and just all of your knowledge of building these tools, I feel like it's going to be so helpful for people right now building DAOs. And I also love your enthusiasm, and I'm sure that your project is going to do so well, because we all need these tools right now when we want to build these amazing DAOs. And so thank you so much for being part of today's forum, and thank you everyone who tuned in today's NewForum. And if you guys also want to get more involved within our community, make sure to follow us on Instagram. We also have Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, and we are NewForum_NCO and also NewCoin. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode of NewForum. Thank you, Bryan, and thank you, Salimi.